Now, we've been working on a story setting in which our stories will take place, and we've also been designing our main protagonist. But now we need to come up with a specific plan for our story. We need to figure out what's going to happen first, what's going to happen second, and so on. We'll have a story planner that looks like this. You'll notice that it has 8 boxes. In this planner, you're going to write out each of the things that will happen in the story. So in the first box, I want you to describe the story setting. So in other words, you're going to start your novel by describing your story world. So in box 1, I'm just going to write describe story world. Then you're going to bring in your main character, your protagonist. So in the second box, I'm going to write describe protagonist. But when I actually write the story, I'm going to write at least a half a page just describing my story world and just describing my protagonist. I'm going to write a great mind picture for each of those. Alright, so I've described my story world and my main character. Now in box 3, I'm going to bring in the conflict in my story. A conflict is like a problem that happens in a story. Usually it's a problem that our protagonist needs to overcome. Almost every story has a conflict. Like my story is going to be about a dog who talks and his name is Joe. Now Joe's an interesting character because he thinks he's a rabbit. That's kind of colorful. And whenever he sees a hole, he tries to jump down into the hole. I could write a story about Joe where the conflict is that he jumps down into a hole that he can't get out of. That is a problem. Now Joe is stuck. So that story would have a conflict. It would have a problem that Joe is stuck in the hole. But imagine a story that didn't have a conflict at all. Like Joe and his friend Bob, they go out to dinner and then they order some food for dinner and they sit and talk for a while and then they decide to go home and Joe watches some TV and then he goes to sleep. Well, that's not a very interesting story. There was no problem in that story to overcome. Joe just kind of went to dinner and went to bed and really nothing happened. I'm not sure my reader would really want to read a story about just Joe going to dinner because it's not very interesting. In fact, it's really boring. So make sure in box 3 you have a really good conflict, a really good problem for your story. Now in boxes 4, 5, and 6, some big events are going to happen. Make sure that you write big events in these boxes. Like I wouldn't want to write for box 4, Joe walks down the street, because that's not like a really big event. People walk down the street all the time. A bigger event would be that Joe calls the police on his cell phone to try to get out of the hole, and the police come and try to rescue him. And when they get there, they talk to Joe, and Joe talks back to them. On my planner, I'm just going to write Joe calls the police, and the police come to try to rescue him. But in the actual story, I'm going to stretch out that part. I'm going to write like a whole page just on box 4. I'm going to have some dialogue where Joe's talking to the police and the police answer him. It's going to be really stretched out. Now in box 5, the police send some police dogs down into the hole to try to rescue Joe, except they forget to bring the ladder. So now the police dogs are down there with Joe in the hole and none of them can get out. Well, that's a big event. I'm going to stretch out that part when I write the story and add the dialogue where Joe is talking to the other dogs and they can't get out of the hole and the police are talking to them. I'm going to stretch that part out really good. Now in box 6, the police send their police bird down into the hole to try to rescue Joe. Joe gets about halfway up out of the hole when suddenly he falls down because he's too heavy and now he's back in the hole. I'm going to write for box 6, police try to rescue Joe with their bird. But then I'm going to stretch out that part, so I'm going to write like a whole page just on that little part. Now box 7 is for the climax. The climax is for a big event in the story where the problem is finally solved. The conflict is solved. In my story, one of the police officers has a good idea. He remembers that the police have a giant trampoline. So they send the trampoline down into the hole, and Joe and the other dogs bounce their way out of the hole, and Joe is saved. That's called my climax because the problem of the story is finally solved. Now, box 8 is the resolution. The resolution is like where the story is wrapped up at the end. You could tell in the resolution whatever happened to all of your main characters. Or sometimes people write like a cliffhanger ending or a suspenseful ending where something happens that might lead to like a sequel or to another part. There could be a whole nother story later if you use a cliffhanger ending. In my story, I'm going to wrap up the resolution, the ending of the story, because the police award a medal to Joe for being so brave and not panicking when he's down in the hole. Since Joe still believes he's a rabbit, the police award him a Brave Rabbit medal. Joe is really happy, and that's how my story ends. So you see, I've given it a resolution in box 8, and I'm going to write Joe gets rabbit medal and lives happily ever after. Now I have all 8 boxes of my story planner all planned out. Nice going, Joe. Now for the next 15 minutes or so, we're going to finish our story world pictures, and then we're going to start on our planners with the 8 boxes. Don't forget to make each of those 8 boxes really interesting. Like I tried to think about funny things that could happen to Joe, like the trampoline and the police bird and so forth, to make each box in my planner interesting and fun. Once you're done with your planner, you're going to show it to your teacher, and your teacher will probably have some comments and things that they want you to go back and add, or maybe a part that they want you to make more interesting. So they'll look over your planner. So here's the order of work. Number 1, make sure to finish up your story world picture. By the end of this 15-minute session, your story world picture should definitely be done. So make sure to finish that up quickly. We don't want to spend too much time planning because we have to actually write the story. Then you're going to do the story planner with the 8 boxes when you're finished with that. Anybody who can finish the story picture by the end of this 15-minute period earns 1 point for getting that done. Okay, so let's set the timer for 15 minutes and let's begin. Okay, thanks for coming back to the meeting area. If you were able to come over quickly, hopefully you earned a point. Also, if you were able to finish your story picture up, then you should have earned a point as well. Your teacher will put up those points. Now, you might have also finished your planner with the 8 boxes. If you did, then you're ready to actually start your story. If you didn't, that's okay. You can work on that next. For those people who are ready to start their story, let me talk about how to start your story. The easiest way to start a story is on the first page to write 2 mind pictures. On the first half of the first page, you're going to write a mind picture that introduces your readers to the story world that you designed. You're going to describe that story world really well in about a half page, maybe a little more or a little less. But it shouldn't just be like one sentence. You want to write like a good half page describing that story world. Then the next thing you're going to do is on the next half page of your first page, you're going to describe your protagonist. You're going to bring your protagonist in and tell all about your protagonist. In the mind picture about your protagonist, you can describe how he or she looks, but you could also describe like his or her personality. If you have like a special idea for how to start your story that's a little different from starting it with the 2 mind pictures, ask your teacher and it'll probably be fine to do that. But if you don't have a special way that you want to start your story, then start it with a half page mind picture of your story world and a half page mind picture about your protagonist. You could also introduce your antagonist there if you want to, or you could wait until later in the story when the antagonist comes into the story, like maybe in box 3. Here's what your writing paper will look like. You notice that there's a box in the top corner and there's a box in the bottom corner. You're going to write your story on the paper and later we'll add in some illustrations in the 2 boxes. Eventually those illustrations will be in color. If you want to sketch in your illustrations while you're writing, that's totally fine to do that. Now, in most of our classes, we don't have time to write first drafts and second drafts, so this will most likely be your final draft that you're actually writing. We'll make some edits to it for sure, but for that reason, try to write kind of neat if you can. It doesn't have to be perfectly neat, but we want it to be readable, especially since this will be the final draft. Okay, so here's the work order. Your story picture should be finished by now. If you still are working on that, let's take a last minute or 2 to finish up, but it really is time to move on because we want to write our story. Then you're going to work on your story planner with the 8 boxes, and then you're going to write page 1 of your story. Once you finish page 1, show it to your teacher. They might have some comments or changes that they want you to make. Then you can actually start on the action in your story and bring in the conflict from box 3 in your planner. Okay, good luck. We're so excited to see what you write. Let's set the timer for 25 minutes for a writing period. See if you can finish up the first page of your story in that 25 minutes. That would be great. Your teacher is going to be giving points for people who are working really hard and doing some great writing. And then we'll come back together and we'll have a little game. Okay, let's begin. Okay, hopefully you got off to a good start with the first part of your story. We're going to take a break from that for a minute and play a little game. I call it the red pen contest. Now you might be wondering, what is a red pen word? In the red pen contest today, you're going to have a red pen and you're going to have a sample story. You're going to try to find as many red pen words as you can. Now you might be wondering, what's a red pen word? A red pen word in this class is what we call an interesting synonym. Sometimes people call these gem words. Like, take a look at this sample story. My brother and I decided to go watch a soccer game. Then we went to the stadium. Then the game started. Then we decided to order some snacks. Then I got a pretzel. Then I put some mustard on it. Then my team scored a goal and I cheered. Then we decided to go home. Let's do a quick turn and talk. How do you think this story could be improved? Turn to a partner and let's turn and talk. So hopefully you and your partner identified that there are like way too many thens in this story. It's like then this, then this, then this. They keep using that word then over and over. Take a look at the story again. This time you'll notice that I put in some different words for then. Like I used later on, I used after that, I put at 3 o'clock. I tried to mix it up a little bit. If you always use the same word over and over, your reader is going to get a little bit bored. Sometimes people do this with the word said. They'll say like Joe said, the police dog said, said. You can use some different words for said. Like look at all of these different synonyms that mean the same thing as said. Like shouted is a loud said, and cried is like an emotional said, and murmured is like a quiet said. Whenever we take a kind of boring word and change it to a more interesting word, that we call that in this class a red pen word. We actually change the word and put in the new word and write it in red. Like take a look at this kind of silly sentence from a story. It says, the small boy said hello to the happy woman. Take a minute with a partner and see if you can change 3 of the words in this sentence to a different red pen word that might be a little bit better. Okay, let's set the timer for a minute and turn and talk. So even though this is a really short sentence, there's so many possible red pen words. For instance, for small, you could have said tiny or minuscule or teeny, or there's so many different words for small. Look at them all here. For said, obviously you could have changed that word like we talked about earlier. Even the word woman could be changed, like you could say lady instead. If you really looked hard, you might have even found some other words, like hello. You could change that to say like bonjour, which is hello in French. Or you could change it to say hola, which is hello in Spanish. Or even like hi, or how you doing? We're going to have a contest to see how many red pen words you can change in 2 minutes. We're going to give you a little story. It looks like this. It's kind of a silly story. Your teacher's also going to pass out a red pen for you to use. The first thing that will happen is your teacher will pass out the story and give you a couple minutes to read over the story. Then your teacher will pass out the red pens, and when everybody has their red pen, your teacher will say go. You're not allowed to change any words until your teacher says go, so make sure to listen for that. Once your teacher says go, then you'll have 2 minutes to change as many red pen words as you can. Remember that you have to use synonyms when you change your red pen words. Like if the word was short, you couldn't change it to tall, because tall doesn't mean the same thing as short. You would have to change it to another word that means short. Your teacher will also pass out some helper sheets with some common synonyms to help you if you're having trouble thinking of red pen words. That sheet looks like this. Once 2 minutes are up, your teacher will say, red pens down. Everybody has to put their red pen down there. You can't make any more changes, otherwise your teacher could take away a point. Then in the little box on the very bottom of the sheet, you'll add up the number of words you were able to change. Then you'll turn in your paper to your teacher, and your teacher will double check how many words you changed while you guys are working on your stories. The winner of the contest earns 3 points up in our point total. Whoever finishes second earns 2 points, and whoever finishes third earns 1 point. If there's a tie, then both people get that amount. All right, let's take a couple minutes to get ready for the game, and then your teacher will say go once everybody's ready. Good luck in the contest. Okay, hopefully you were able to change some red pen words in the contest. I'd say if you got more than like 9 words changed, then you did really well. So good job with that. Your teacher will be checking the points over and will put up the points for the winner and second and third place while you're working. Remember, the contest was just for fun, so if you didn't win, don't worry about it. It was just kind of a fun contest. For the rest of class today, we're going to continue to work on our stories. If you finish the first page of your story, then you can go on to page 2, which would probably be box 3 on your planner. Your teacher is going to be looking to give points for people who are working really hard, and meanwhile your teacher will also put up the points from the red pen contest. Good luck, and let's do some great writing.